everybody, Tara Green here, presenting you with the astrology of the Libra new moon, September 25th, 2022. This chart is for 5:55 p.m. That's Eastern Daylight Time. If you're in Pacific Time, it is 2:55 p.m. And if you're in Greenwich Mean Time, it's 9:55 p.m. on the same day. So this is a very amazing chart here. I didn't realize until I got into it and I added this extra asteroid, Russia. Yes, there's 100,000 asteroids, and there's all kinds of people, countries, things. There's a David Bowie asteroid, actually. Until I added the asteroid Russia and used the Black Moon Lilith, which is very much about the situation. I also put in an asteroid called Irani, which is like Iran, very much about the news, what's going on in the news right now. So a six-pointed star, or a Merkabah, is a very rare combination. Okay, so means it's a very auspicious Libra new moon. The Libra new moons, or any new moon, is the dark time of the month. This Libra new moon at 2 degrees of Libra, you can see it there, is conjunct something called the Super Galactic Center right there. So the Super Galactic Center is something, space anomaly, even NASA, we're just beginning to really understand and explore outer space. Astrologer Philip Sedgwick is the expert on all the galactic information, black holes, and it is something that attracts all of the galaxies. They don't really understand what it is. They don't know how to classify it. Is it a quasar, a maser? They don't know. Anyway, it gives you the ability to see into the future. It bends light, actually. Okay, so the focus is on what can we see coming far ahead of the curve. Okay, now Libra, the sign of relationships, the hope for balance, the go-between, the ambassador. I know there's a lot of hate on and for young TikTokers and Twitter people in Gen Z that they don't like Libras because they think they're superficial, but Libras just want to be nice. So they'll bend over backwards to try to accommodate you. That doesn't mean they're superficial. They do rely on what other people think. So there's that energy there. Now Venus, the planetary ruler of Libra, is right there at 25 degrees of Virgo, which is also squared to the galactic center. Now that's not marked here. It's conjunct, Venus is conjunct Mercury retrograde as well. So Venus, the ruler of this lunation, squaring exactly the galactic center there, the big black hole at the center of our galaxy at 27 degrees Sagittarius. Okay, I didn't put that one in because it was getting a bit too confusing here. Actually, there's too much going on here. So Mercury is about to conjunct Venus. Okay, so Venus in Virgo, Mercury in Virgo, we're thinking about basics. We're thinking about work. We're being humble. We're trying to serve other people, which is a very Libran kind of thing, in a very grounded, practical way. Virgo is the workaholic, the little OCD person, the nitpicker, the accountant, somebody who takes accountability. Virgo rules the harvest. It is also one of the few human signs. There's a woman, traditionally the only woman really in the zodiac traditionally, is the Virgin Goddess Ceres. And she's right here actually at 28 degrees of Leo, conjunct the fixed star Regulus. So Virgo issues: cleanup, tidying, taking care of business, saving money, budgeting, worrying about health, being healthy, watching your diet. Upper digestion can be a flutter during this time. Okay, so let's see what's going on here. Now the planet Jupiter, retrograde as well, 3 degrees Aries opposite the lunation. So Jupiter expands whatever it touches, so Jupiter is fighting for a balance. Jupiter is the warrior in Aries, so we have to fight to make peace. I know that sounds like a conundrum, right? So we have to stand up for how we seek balance in our lives. Okay, now, the other things that are going on here. Neptune, the planet of dreams, inspiration, creativity, spirituality, addictions, projection, is at 23 degrees of Pisces, retrograde opposite Venus. That exact Venus-Neptune opposition happened yesterday, and opposite Mercury. So again, we might be feeling kind of dizzy or lost or clouded, or I don't really know. WTF is going on because, Venus in Virgo is very practical, hands-on, show me the work, proof of work, and Neptune kind of dissolves all that. Neptune goes, no, don't focus on the details, focus on the big spiritual picture. And Neptune is also moving up slowly to also square the galactic center, which is going to be really interesting. That's going to happen over the next couple of years. So big new spiritual, psychic, direct galactic intervention. You've heard it from me here now. Direct galactic intervention from, I was just drawn to looking at the Galactic Federation and all the different star systems involved in that. So really that's what's incoming. So you could start to tune into that now with Venus and Mercury and get your own connection to that. Okay, now there's a big grand, one of the parts of the big triangle here is the big Earth trine here between Venus, ruler of this lunation, Mercury retrograde, to Pluto at 26 Capricorn. Now remember that the US is still going through its first Pluto return, so the economy collapsing, government control, all that kind of issues, that's Pluto, okay? Money, power, control, secrets, okay? So Pluto it's in a very wide, this is not really a kosher grand trine technically, because a trine is supposed to be 5 degrees away, but let's use it, okay? So Uranus, because there's other important things going on here, Uranus at 18 degrees of Taurus is really trining Venus widely as well, conjunct the North Node in Taurus. So that North Node is where the collective unconscious needs to go to. In this chart, based on Washington, D.C., it's in the 3rd house of communications, thinking, analysis, siblings, short journeys, things like that, okay? So that's one big Earth, grounded, grand Earth trine. So if you have planets close to these latter degrees, basically I would say mainly it's like really 22 to 28 degrees Earth signs, you would be bound up or drawn into that Earth trine. Now, the other one that's interesting is the grand water trine here, which is definitely from Neptune to Lilith, Black Moon Lilith here in Cancer. So Lilith was the original woman in the Bible. She's much maligned. There's lots of fake news about her. She's one of my go-to goddesses. I've done lots of workshops about Black Moon Lilith. She was the original woman before Eve, created equally with Adam. She insisted on equality and not being dominated by Adam, who tried to get her to lie below her sexually. So she said, forget it, I'm out of here. I left paradise, went to live by the Red Sea. She is tied to menstrual blood, which is really the foundation of conception, birth, menopause. When women find their powers after menopause, they become wise crones and elders revered in indigenous communities. So Lilith, it was the symbol of the original goddess before patriarchy. We're seeing, what we're seeing in the world is really the end of patriarchy, who's trying to desperately control onto its power when it's clearly over. So for whatever, it's also, we're on the verge of the Jewish New Year today on the new moon. The Jewish calendar is very ancient and it's still tied into lunar cycles, just like Islam and China, Japan. Most of the Mayan, most of the indigenous cultures work by the new moon cycles. So the new moon is always the beginning of a cycle, new intentions, for 2.5 days while the moon is dark. The women would traditionally retreat to their moon lodges. They would bleed under the new moon, retreat to their dark moon lodges, their yurts, their huts, to bleed. There is sacred menstrual blood. Tabu means sacred. And Lilith is tied to that, which is tied to sexuality in some ways too. So it's the beginning of Rosh Hashanah, one of the first big holy days in the Jewish calendar. So whatever year we're at in the Jewish calendar, 5,800 something years ago, that's when patriarchy officially started. And so Lilith was before then. Every woman was identified with the goddess because she was a birth giver, because her body was miraculous, because she bled every month in concert with the moon, she didn't die. And one of women's inherent powers is their sexuality, which is really omnipotent compared to men's. So at one point, I believe there was a golden age where it was feminine based, because it's pretty obvious that the archetype of the feminine is space. We all know we come from space, the great void. Everything comes from this feminine nurturing. We're all born of woman, and men have an equal respected part to play in support of and in relationship to women. And at one point that was all great. The men knew their role. They protected the women when they needed to on the outer. They brought their gifts of creating things in the physical world, whereas women create from the spiritual world into the physical. The men are yearning for the spiritual. I mean, that is still the foundation. And the spiritual is feminine. Space is feminine. And so that was once in balance, but then something happened and the men got all insecure, and that's when patriarchy started. So Lilith represents the original woman She wears an owl on her shoulder like Athena, indicating psychic energy she can see in all dimensions and all directions. And so Lilith said, I don't want to have anything to do with Adam unless he treats me with respect. And so really Lilith right now represents that. So Eve was created from Adam's rib. That's clearly a man-made story. They leave you that obvious clue in it. Lilith returns in the Garden of Eden as the snake in the tree of knowledge, telling Eve to eat the apple and think for herself, and never mind this patriarchal, whatever, made up God in the sky, which is totally ridiculous and totally illogical. People used to have logic. People have been brainwashed for all these years with these bullshit stories. Anyway, Lilith does eat the apple, which is good. That creates free will. But the moral of the story from the patriarchal point of view is just to enslave women, put them down, control them. And we can see that control still happening and even amping up today. This backlash that's happening with the Roe versus Wade and with Iran right now, and many oppressed women all over the world. Women are still oppressed. They're just starting to come out of that since the last 22 years, actually, in the beginning of the age of the high priestess in the 2000s. So there's Lilith in Cancer. She has been misaligned as a child eater and a vampire, and if you hear Lilith associated with any of that, that is just men's fear of this powerful, powerful feminine image. Any feminine, like Medusa, that's demonized is because she has the most power. So there's Lilith there in that at 18 degrees Cancer, very close to Sirius, which is the most beautiful, powerful star in the sky. Sirius is where the U.S. sun is, so there's America involved in that too. And then that trines this asteroid Russia, which I was thinking about Russia. I'm going to look at Putin's chart. I'm going to look at what's going on there because it's pretty dangerous. And so that makes a big grand water trine. Russia, the asteroid is at 25 degrees of Scorpio, actually. And the south node there is nearby at 13 degrees of Scorpio. And then the asteroid Irani is right there too at about 9 degrees, I believe. So Iran involved in some kind of releasing, letting go of sexual power. I mean, the whole thing about the Muslims as well, just like coming from the Christianity and the Jews, they are just all about controlling women's power and sexuality. Okay, so Mars is at this square here, the T-square here of Venus and Mercury and Neptune at 18 degrees of Gemini, right at the bottom of that chart there. Hang on here, I've got to charge my phone up here before I lose power. So Mars, in Gemini for about 7 months there, it's already past the middle degree. And, Gemini, Mars will turn retrograde at the end of October at about 25 degrees Gemini and go backwards until January the 11th, I believe it is, at 8 degrees of Gemini. So you want to watch those degrees as well. So that's a big T-square, how we communicate, what we communicate about not being of two minds. So remember all these air signs, dualistic. Saturn at 19 degrees of Aquarius, also squaring Uranus. So we're back in the Saturn-Uranus squares, which were taking place all during 2021. So we're going through round 3 or 4 here, which you don't usually get. Saturn's also squaring the North Node here. So the bull market, the Taurus market, there's limits. Saturn puts the brakes on. Saturn Aquarius rules cryptocurrency, also why things are not moving ahead. All right, Saturn is in conjunct, Lilith here. So again, Saturn, the patriarchy. We don't want to innovate anything here. We want to hold women back. We want to stick to the good old days, all right? Now, Lilith here is also in conjunct to, at the top of the chart here is the Great Attractor, which is about 14 degrees of Sag, okay? So Lilith can attract whatever she desires right now. So it's really important, the Black Moon phase, Black Moon Lilith, I believe she's really pivotal here. That Great Attractor is sextile Saturn in Aquarius, so it's interesting that we can play off that as sextile is a positive energy. What else have we got here? Chiron, the wounded healer at 14 degrees of Aries, is also in conjunct. These green lines are in conjuncts where planets are 150 degrees apart to Iran. So Chiron and Aries, there's a fight, a military fight against the women standing up now because they killed an innocent woman for not wearing her headscarf. So the women are cutting off their hair and throwing around their hijabs. They want to be free of this totalitarian control that already I think 42 people have died. The women are not giving up. They need support from the West. There were sanctions on Iran. That needs to keep up. Okay, these women need to be free. All women need to be free. So big grand trine there. Tune into the Merkabah. Again, this is the Star of David on Rosh Hashanah. Very interesting. Pluto, again, that trine to Venus and Virgo, being practical, being grounded. There was just a big scare yesterday about a solar flare, September 24th, which there was a little eruption from the sun. A big long filament came out. It wasn't a big deal. It was more like there was a big hurricane, and there's been lots of earthquakes, which are caused by the recent spate of solar flares and CMEs because the sun is reactivating again. Okay. So again, the Libra new moon conjunct the Super Galactic Center. Tune into that super galactic energy. Ceres there at 28 degrees of Leo, conjunct the fixed star Regulus. That's Raphael, traditionally also trining the galactic center right now. So if you have planets at late Aries, you would be involved in, it's not showing here, but a grand fire trine. Okay. Yeah, Saturn is trining Mars as well. So we want to use the ability to be rational and think clearly and not get tied into the duplicity. Okay, everything is about complementary opposites. That's the nice thing about going into Aquarius, which we're going to start that age soon. So Russia again involved in that grand water trine. You know, water, it's very emotional. Again, the U.S. is going to get involved here somehow because that Lilith projecting that, it's all about rebels or anybody who goes against the great. That's what Lilith really represents. I do not bow down to that patriarchal god. So anybody who doesn't bow down to whatever the gods are, and people believe in different gods and see it different ways. That's Libra. You see it this way, I see it that way. You say tomatoes, I say tomatoes. That's also Mars and Gemini. And Saturn and Aquarius too. All these air signs having these big conversations about which side is right. So we want to have peace. If you're having family dilemmas, if you're having any kind of arguments with your friends, family, whatever, whoever's in your life, you want to make peace. So it's time to fly the white flag. The ascendant here, 7 degrees of Pisces. Part of fortune is also 7 degrees of Pisces there with conjunct Juno, the feminine form of genius. Again, see all directions here. You have to bring in all different viewpoints here to make peace. Everybody can have a big, deep sigh of relief. So sending you many, many blessings. I've had some really very intense readings with people lately. If you want to get in touch with me, I have a little special on right now, a little equinox special. If you want to get in touch with me through my website, I'm at tarottarot.com. Wishing you all the best blessings. Use the dark moon time. We're just really past the equinox as well to really go within for a couple of days because it's so early in Libra. The moon will stay in Libra until late on the 27th when the moon enters the most intense sign of the month, Scorpio, at 7:15 p.m. That's Eastern Daylight Time. So wishing you all the best blessings. Please get in touch with me at tarottarot.com.